Australia is a huge country. We have Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in Australia, and we've got so many different cultural groups, from Tasmania right through to the top of Queensland, the Northern Territory, Central Australia, Western Australia, the East Coast, Queensland, New South Wales. And so there's so many different vegetation, so much diversity in the landscape, and so there's very many different traditional foods, flora and fauna. So the types of foods that people are accessing and eating up in Northern Australia, for example, in the Northern Territory on the coastal areas, is so different to the types of foods that people are accessing in the desert. There's food from the sea, there's foods from the sky, the bush, the mangroves, the sand. There's such a variety of different foods, and these foods are very much part of people's lives in Australia. People connect with these foods, identify with these foods. They represent people's cultures, so these foods are so important for Indigenous Australians. In the northern part of Australia, right across Northern Australia, from Western Australia, the Northern Territory, there's the Kakadu plum. So it's also called the billy goat plum, and also Aboriginal people have got their own language names for this particular food. So the Kakadu plum is very high in vitamin C. I think it's got levels of about 2,000 to 3,000 milligrams per 100 grams. So it's very strong in antioxidants, it's got antimicrobial activity, antifungal activity, and there's a fantastic example of commercialization of this Kakadu plum in one community, in Wadeye community, in the Northern Territory. So there's a women's organisation and they own the takeaway in the community. So over a number of years they were able to save up some money, and they got there was a person outside of the community who came in and helped them to purchase a company in Sydney, where this Sydney company had started harvesting and processing the Kakadu plum. So these women's actually bought the rights of that processing process. They bought the patent, they bought the machinery, and so in their community, they're the ones that are actually going out and harvesting the Kakadu plum. They sort the Kakadu plum, they grade it, they provide it to the southern markets where it's made into a powder, and then it's used within Australia and it's exported overseas. So I think this is a fantastic example of Indigenous people commercialising a product but still having control over the whole process of harvesting, collecting, manufacturing, that whole value chain essentially. Driving the whole process of harvesting the Kakadu plums and setting up that market, I think, is a fantastic initiative of Indigenous people driving these. But we do need to make sure that we've got strong policies in place that are going to protect Indigenous knowledge and Indigenous rights.